Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, all the history, the mythology, the hidden knowledge, and we use them to explore your biggest ideas.
That's right.
And today, wow, we are taking the breakaway civilization concept and really stretching it way back, thousands of years into the past.
It's a fascinating mission today. We're looking at this idea, this hypothesis that a very ancient, highly advanced group, let's call them the custodians for now, has been secretly, guiding humanity.
Guiding our evolution.
Yes, not just technologically, but spiritually too. Think massive, periodic, ethical software upgrades for humanity.
Okay, let's unpack that, because normally breakaway civilization, you think Richard Dolan, right? Post-World War II, secret tech, military-industrial complex, hidden away from us.
The modern idea.
But what you, the listener, are suggesting is this goes much, much deeper, like way back into prehistory. You're bringing in thinkers like Jason Giorgiani, who see this secrecy rooted in esoteric history.
Yeah, it completely shifts the timeline. The core idea here is that history isn't just stuff happening, it's potentially being shepherded. We're exploring the possibility that every major leap civilization itself, complex ethics, might have been triggered by this hidden agency.
And the exhibit A for this, the most compelling piece you put forward, is the teaching of Jesus. I mean, you can't really argue with the scale of that moral lead, can you?
It's pretty staggering when you really look at his core message: radical forgiveness, universal compassion, nonviolence. It feels so alien to the first century context.
Completely out of place.
Absolutely. You had this tribal hierarchical world, the Pax Romana, built on violence and honor codes, and suddenly this figure appears advocating universalism, love your enemies, value the outcasts, the poor.
It feels like it came from nowhere.
Well, proponents of this theory would say that level of moral sophistication, that sudden jump, it points towards something extraordinary. Not just a human genius thinking things up, but maybe a seed planted deliberately from outside the normal human condition of the time.
Right. So this deep dive, we're going to trace this idea. We'll look at ancient Venus myths, theosophy, the whole Lucifer-Christ duality, even Roswell. Can we weave all that into a single hidden story of custodian guidance?
It's ambitious. But let's see if we can follow the threads. Where does the evidence, or at least the resonance, for this guiding hand begin?
Well, the strength of the hypothesis, I think, is how deeply it echoes through history and mythology. I mean, you look back at almost any culture's foundational stories,
And you find this archetype, the outside helper.
pretty much everywhere. It's almost universal, which kind of suggests that this idea that civilization wasn't just invented by us alone, but maybe seeded or shepherded, it's somehow embedded deep in our collective memory.
Okay, so give us some examples. Where do we see this clearly in the foundational myths?
Well, the obvious starting point is the Book of Enoch. You've got the Watchers, the Nephilim.
Right, the heavenly beings who came down. Exactly, came down, broke the rules, taught humans forbidden arts, metallurgy, cosmetics, magic, weapons. They were culture bearers, definitely, even if the story frames it as ultimately corrupting.
That sets up a really interesting duality right away. Guidance as both a gift and potentially a curse.
It does. Then jump way forward, late 19th, early 20th century, you get theosophy. Now, theosophy, for anyone unfamiliar, it's this complex blend of Easter ideas like karma and reincarnation with Western occultism, mainly put together by Helena Blavatsky.
And she talked about hidden guides.
Very explicitly, the hidden masters, or the Great White Brotherhood, these were supposed to be highly evolved beings living in secret places like the mythical Shambhala, guiding humanity's spiritual evolution from behind the scenes.
So it's the same pattern again. Watchers are the ancient myth, hidden masters are the modern esoteric version, advanced guides operating secretly.
Precisely. And often these figures risk something to help us. Think Prometheus in Greek myth. He steals fire, which you can read as technology, knowledge, even consciousness itself gives it to humanity.
And gets punished horrifically for it by Zeus.
Yeah. Then, maybe most dramatically, you look at Sumer, the civilization that just seems to explode onto the scene, almost fully formed.
With writing, math, cities.
And their myths, full of the Anunnaki, powerful beings who supposedly gave humans kingship, laws, the blueprint for civilization. Whether you see them as gods, angels, or even ancient astronauts, the core idea is the same. Someone handed us the starter pack.
So the big question this raises is, why? Why do these stories persist across cultures and times? Why frame our origins around getting help from outside?
It really does suggest a feeling of discontinuity. Like something doesn't quite add up in the standard story of slow, steady progress. Now, obviously, mainstream archaeology is, let's say, skeptical.
Right, they're looking for the smoking gun, The high-tech ruins, the ancient circuit board.
And they haven't found them, which is a totally fair point. You look at amazing sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Okay, it's incredibly old, like 12,000 years.
Built by hunter-gatherers. Mind-blowing stuff.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Huge megalithic structures, complex society way earlier than we thought. It messes up our timelines for social organization, definitely. But it's still Stone Age tech, fundamentally. Yeah. No lasers found.
Okay, what about a middle ground? Maybe not high-tech industry, but a secret group carrying advanced knowledge, like maybe a priestly caste or a sophisticated seafaring culture. Think Phoenicians, maybe spreading ideas, astronomy, geometry, myths, discreetly.
That's a very plausible angle, a kind of intellectual or spiritual breakaway group. They wouldn't leave behind factories, but they could leave behind ideas, structures, myths, becoming the gods or angels in local legends. That could be the custodian's more terrestrial cover story, perhaps. Yeah. Hashtag 1.2 ethical software upgrades and the axial age.
Okay, but you mentioned the real clincher for this theory isn't just tools or writing, it's morality. The shifts during the axial age.
Yes, this is where it gets really compelling, I think, because we're not talking about physical tech anymore. We're talking about the technology of the soul, the mind, and culminating, as you said, in the teachings of Christ.
Let's just hammer home how radical that was. Set the scene again. Ancient world, unforgiving, vengeful.
Right. Jesus's message, as it's recorded, was just structurally revolutionary. It was radically universalist, no Jew nor Gentile. That cuts right through the core tribal identity that defined everything back then.
Huge.
It demanded unconditional nonviolence. Turn the other cheek. Unthinkable in an honor-shame culture built on retaliation. And it was radically egalitarian, valuing the outcasts, the poor, women, often saying they had more spiritual insight than the powerful elites.
It really does feel like a quantum leap in morality. Like comparing it to science, it's like jumping from basic arithmetic straight to calculus or Newton to Einstein. It's a whole new operating system.
A new OS for human interaction based on cooperation, empathy, non-retaliation.
Yeah.
So how do you explain that jump? There are basically two ways to look at it.
Are they?
The first is the cultural genius view. This says, okay, figures like Buddha, Confucius, Socrates, Jesus scale, they were exceptional human outliers, just brilliant individuals who synthesized the best ideas around them and leaped ahead, driven by their own genius and maybe the needs of their time. Spontaneous combustion of insight, basically.
Plausible. Happens in science and art.
Sure. But the guided view, which the sources we're exploring lean towards, argues something different. It says the fully formed nature of this moral leap, especially with Christ, how systematic and comprehensive it is, feels too perfect, too complete, to just be a spontaneous invention.
Suggesting outside influence.
Exactly. It indicates the influence of a hidden source, whether that's a non-physical spiritual intelligence or maybe a physical, highly advanced priestly caste, the custodians actively seeding these fully developed ethical frameworks into society.
Like an ethical software upgrade, as you put it. If the Watchers seeded metallurgy tech 1.0, maybe the axial age figures were seeding consciousness 2.0.
That's the analogy. And look, the axial age did happen. These shifts did occur globally. Roughly concurrently. That's historical fact. The debate is about the mechanism. Was it natural, gradual evolution? Or was it periodic, strategic seeding by a hidden agency that understands the deep code of consciousness?
It reframes scriptures then. Less as history books, more like deployment manuals for this seed knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, so if these custodians exist, where are they supposed to have come from? The sources point somewhere specific, right? Venus?
Yes, this Venus connection is really one of the most intriguing parts of this whole hidden narrative. It weaves together occult tradition, mythology, and even Abrahamic faiths. Venus, obviously, is the brightest object in the sky. Besides the sun and moon, it's always held huge symbolic power.
The morning star and the evening star.
Exactly. Tied universally to divine messengers, light bringers. You see it with Ishtar in Mesopotamia, goddess of love, fertility, but also war. And Venus, the Roman goddess, it's deeply embedded.
But the sources you mentioned, like Theosophy, get really specific about this.
They do. Blavatsky's cosmology talks about the Lords of the Flame. These beings, led by a figure called Sanat Kumara, supposedly came here from Venus millions of years ago, way before humans were really conscious in the way we are now.
And their mission?
To be the spiritual regent of Earth. Basically, to jumpstart human evolution by bringing the spark, the divine flame of higher consciousness. And they supposedly established a hidden center, Shambhala, to oversee this project.
Okay, so in this framework, the custodians are essentially Venusian exiles or missionaries, bringing advanced spiritual tech to a primitive Earth.
That's the idea. And this loops directly back to Jesus, because in the book of Revelation, chapter 22, verse 16, Jesus explicitly calls himself the bright morning star.
Whoa, okay. That's specific.
And it feels incredibly specific, not a casual title. It reads like a deliberate esoteric signal. By identifying with the morning star, Jesus seems to be consciously aligning himself with that whole Venusian archetype, the light bringer, the herald of a new dawn, placing himself right in that lineage of custodians supposedly guiding humanity from Shambhala.
So the speculative story emerges. An advanced civilization from Venus, maybe their world was dying, which science actually suggests happened billions of years ago, or maybe it's just their mission migrates to Earth. They set up hidden bases, mystery schools, and guide us through periodic interventions and emissaries.
Right. The Venusian origin gives them their advanced status and a clear purpose, and that morning star title acts like a deliberate breadcrumb, linking the cosmic myth directly to the ethical upgrade delivered millennia later.
But Venus isn't just the morning star, the rising light. It's also the evening star, the light that fades into dusk. There's an inherent duality there.
Absolutely central. And that duality plays out dramatically within the custodian mission itself, according to these esoteric interpretations. You get the split, Lucifer and Christ.
Often seen as total opposites, good versus evil.
But in this view, there are two faces of the same fundamental light-bearing intelligence. The Venusian current. It's just that one path leads to corruption through pride, the other to purification through service.
Okay, let's look at the fallen aspect first, Lucifer. The name itself means light bearer, right?
It does. But then you have that famous passage in Isaiah 14. O morning star, son of the dawn, how you have fallen. This symbolizes the faction, let's say, of custodians who got intoxicated.
With their own power.
Exactly. With their knowledge, their abilities. Having descended to Earth, maybe they fell into the trap of ego, started misusing their gifts, seeking worship and domination over the primitive humans they were supposed to be helping. It perfectly mirrors the story of the corrupt watchers in Enoch. They set themselves up as gods. Lucifer becomes wisdom without humility, without love.
And the risen aspect then is Christ. The bright morning star, Venus rising, symbolizing the restoration of the original pure mission.
Selfless love, humility, service, guidance without domination. It's presented as the corrective path.
So it's like a family drama within the custodian lineage.
Kind of, yeah. Lucifer and Jesus are portrayed as two potentials within the Venusian current deployed on Earth. Both brought light, brought knowledge, but one path leads down into the shadow of pride, the other ascends into the light of love. And humanity is sort of caught in the middle of this cosmic struggle. Knowledge with love versus knowledge without it.
That makes a certain kind of psychological sense. Great power, great knowledge. The risk of hubris is always there, even for advanced beings, presumably. Hashtag 2.3 the Nephilim as fallen Venusians.
And this internal struggle, this duality, brings us right back to one of the Bible's biggest mysteries. Genesis 6, the sons of God mixing with human women, producing the Nephilim.
Usually painted as a fall into sin, leading to corruption and the flood.
Right, that's the common reading. But the text itself, it's a bit weird. It calls the Nephilim heroes of old, men of renown. That doesn't sound immediately like villains, does it? It sounds more like legendary figures, maybe flawed, but significant.
Yeah, heroes of old. Interesting phrasing.
And then there's the name itself, Nephilim. It comes from the Hebrew root nephal, or nephal, which literally just means to fall or to descend.
Okay, so fallen ones might just mean those who came down.
That's the esoteric interpretation. The fall wasn't necessarily a moral sin, like stealing or lying. It was an ontological sacrifice.
Ontological.
Related to the nature of being. Their sacrifice was the act of descending itself, coming down from a higher, maybe less dense, more unified state of consciousness, the Venusian state, into the harsh, difficult, dense conditions of primitive Earth, into physical matter.
Why do that?
To hybridize. To mix their nature with humanity's, to plant the seed of higher potential within us, to uplift our awareness from the inside. They became heroes, maybe not because they were morally perfect, but because they took on this immense burden of separation, of embodiment, carrying higher knowledge into a lower, denser world.
So they weren't punished for being wicked. They were punished by the act of descending, of becoming separate, in order to help us. That's a radical reframing.
It is. The goal, in this view, was to create a hybrid lineage capable of eventually holding that higher, bright morning star consciousness, planting the seed within human genetics itself.
It connects the dots then. The Nephilim become the sacrificial stream of the custodians. They descended, took on separation, became the ancestors of a new potential future for humanity. That explains being called both heroes and linked to a fall.
Okay, so moving forward in the timeline, Sumer again. This custodian story often links up with the Anunnaki myths, but we have to address the Zecharia Sitchin interpretation, the idea they came here for literal gold, needed humans to mine it.
Right, that literal reading, it hits some serious plausibility issues pretty quickly.
Like, why would a super advanced interstellar race need manual labor for mining? And why gold, specifically in bulk quantities, they could automate, synthesize? It doesn't quite track.
Exactly. So to make sense of it within this larger custodian narrative, you have to apply the alchemical lens.
Meaning mining gold is a metaphor. Precisely. In esoteric alchemy, the whole point, the great work, is turning base metals lead, usually into gold. But that's symbolic. Lead represents base matter, the ignorant, unrefined human state. Gold represents enlightenment, perfected consciousness, the divine spark.
Ah, so the Anunnaki weren't digging for metal.
They were mining humanity's potential, searching for that latent divine spark, the gold, trapped within the lead of our primitive consciousness and dense physical bodies. Creating humans as workers becomes symbolic of engineering our biology or psyche to be capable of holding higher consciousness, a kind of spiritual or genetic alchemy.
So the structures of early civilization, irrigation, cities, laws, were like the alchemist's laboratory setup, organizing the raw material humanity so the transformation could begin.
That's one way to look at it. Sumer's sudden appearance, with all its advanced features, looks less like slow invention and more like a pre-packaged software release, a deliberately seeded civilization.
A cultural starter pack.
Yeah, and the Anunnaki myths become these distorted, maybe literalized folk memories of the advanced teachers, the custodians who were initiating this great work. They came to mine the human soul, not the mountains. Hashtag 3.2, the mask of the terrible guardian.
Okay, but that raises the big question again. If they're trying to help us, trying to uplift us, why all the secrecy? Why not just show up and say, hi, we're the custodians, here's the plan?
That's where the strategy gets really subtle. The reasoning offered is, if they appeared as purely benevolent, all-powerful helpers...
Or we become dependent, like children.
Exactly. We'd worship them, rely on them for everything, and never develop our own strength, our own discernment, our own autonomy. We wouldn't earn the evolution.
So they needed a different approach, a masking strategy.
Yes, using friction, ambiguity, even fear to spur growth, to prevent dependency and force us to develop ourselves.
How did that mask look in ancient times?
Think of the portrayal of gods in many ancient myths, including parts of the Old Testament. Often terrifying, warlike, jealous, demanding strict obedience using thunder and fire.
Yeah, not exactly warm and fuzzy.
That fierce god persona, in this view, was a deliberate mask. It inspired discipline, maybe even fear, but it crucially prevented easy worship or dependence. It forced humans to build their own internal moral compass, their own strength, to stand up to or at least navigate this terrifying power. It was like a divine boot camp.
Okay, but that ancient mask maybe doesn't work so well in a modern scientific skeptical age.
Right, so the strategy had to evolve. The modern mask, according to these sources, is the nasty modern breakaway civilization.
I mean, all the rumors and fears about secret underground bases, shadowy elites with black projects, maybe even scary predatory UFOs.
That whole complex of paranoia and fear could be, in part, a deliberate persona. These custodians either allow or perhaps even subtly encourage the perception of a dark, manipulative, predatory hidden group, because that fear, that ambiguity, serves the same purpose as the ancient fierce god mask. To force us to develop discernment, inner authority. We're flooded with conspiracies, conflicting stories, claims about secret agendas. It forces you, the individual, to ask, what's real? Who can I trust? How do I know? Where does truth come from?
So it's a test. Can we see through the scary mask? Can we find truth inside ourselves instead of just reacting to the external fear?
That's the idea. It's precisely the existential workout needed for genuine autonomous evolution. They're testing our ability to handle complexity and find our own grounding. Hashtag 3.3, the strategic seeding of technology, Roswell.
And this strategic guidance, this masking, it continues right into the modern era, specifically with technology needed for the next phase. This brings us to Roswell, 1947.
Yes. We have to consider figures like Colonel Philip Corso, who claimed controversially, of course, that tech recovered from the Roswell crash was deliberately fed into U.S. industry and academia.
The whole reverse engineering narrative. Fiber optics, integrated circuits, night vision.
Right. Now, if we stick with the custodian hypothesis, we have to seriously question the idea of an accidental crash.
You're saying a civilization capable of interstellar or interdimensional travel for potentially millions of years doesn't just, oops, crash land in the desert.
It seems unlikely, let's put it that way. Roswell, in this interpretation, looks less like an accident and more like a controlled, staged delivery, a deliberate insertion of technological catalysts.
Why stage it as a crash, then?
It serves that dual purpose again. It maintains the secrecy, the veil. It feeds the scary alien threat mask, justifying government secrecy and black budgets. But, crucially, it gets the necessary technological seeds planted.
And the timing. You mentioned the timing seems significant.
Think about it. Roswell happens July 1947. Then, just a few months later, December 1947, often called the Miracle Month at Bell Labs, the first working transistor is demonstrated.
The absolute foundation stone of modern electronics.
Exactly. Transistors lead to integrated circuits, which lead to computers, which lead to the internet, fiber optics, the whole global communication network. It looks suspiciously like a very timed, very abrupt cluster of foundational breakthroughs. Miniaturization, information processing, new materials, all appearing right after this alleged delivery event.
And the purpose of seeding that specific tech.
To build the planetary nervous system, the global communications grid. The custodians, in this view, understood that humanity couldn't reach the next stage, collective unity, maybe Christ consciousness, while we were all stuck in isolated tribes with smoke signals and telegraphs. We needed a global brain, a way to connect instantaneously.
So Roswell was the disguised delivery package for the hardware components.
That's the speculative argument. The tech gets delivered, but under the cover of an alien threat that we cleverly reverse-engineered. This keeps the custodians hidden, maintains the mask, and crucially, it allows humanity the sense of accomplishment. We had to figure it out, build the industries, develop the science, forcing us to grow our own autonomy and understanding to actually use the gifted seeds.
Okay, so all this guidance, all this strategy, it's all heading somewhere, towards an endgame of unity, escaping separation. We need to revisit the idea of sin here.
Right. We talked about the Hebrew word shet, meaning missing the mark. Esoterically, sin isn't just doing bad things. It's the fundamental state of being separated from higher consciousness, from the unified source.
Like being out of alignment.
Exactly. And the idea is that humanity, left to its own devices, would just stay stuck in that state, ego-driven, individualistic, competitive, perpetually missing the mark of our true, unified potential. That state of separation is the problem the custodians came to solve.
And this brings us back to their own sacrifice, the Venusian descent.
Yes. Their voluntary fall into matter, the hybridization with humanity via the Nephilim. That was their own crucifixion, in a sense. They had to enter the state of separation, limitation, and density to plant the seed of unity within it. They took on separation to ultimately overcome separation for all of us.
Wow, that directly mirrors what Jesus taught, doesn't it? Especially that instruction he gave before his actual crucifixion.
Precisely. Deny thyself and pick up your cross and follow me. Deny thyself, that's the death of the ego, the separate self. Pick up your cross. The cross symbolizing the intersection of spirit and matter, the burden of embodiment, the catalyst for transformation. It's a universal inner process he was describing.
So the physical crucifixion becomes the outward drama, the symbol of an inner transformation everyone needs to undergo. The ego has to die for the higher unified self, the resurrected state to be born within.
That's the core esoteric teaching, yes. And the cosmic strategy becomes clear. Without that initial custodian sacrifice, that seeding of the unity potential within our separated state, humanity might have remained locked in Chet forever, unable to reach the collective awakening that's the ultimate goal. Hashtag 4.2 apocalypse as unveiling and the threefold human lineage.
And the culmination of this whole process, the grand finale, is often termed the apocalypse. But we need to strip away the Hollywood disaster movie vibe.
Absolutely. The original Greek word, apocalypsis, it just means unveiling, revelation. It doesn't inherently mean fire and brimstone and catastrophe.
It means the veil is lifted.
The veil between worlds, maybe. Or the veil between our ordinary human consciousness and this latent custodian or Christ consciousness. It's the moment the hidden template activates across the whole planet, transforming the system into something new, something unified.
Okay, so if we read the book of Revelation, not as literal prophecy of doom, but as a kind of symbolic map of consciousness transformation, how do we understand the really violent parts, like where 1/3 of the earth or the sea or people are destroyed?
If you reject the literal death interpretation, then maybe those thirds represent something else, a symbolic purging, perhaps. The destruction of a significant portion of the old way of being, the old ego structures, the separation consciousness patterns that are holding humanity back. It's the necessary cognitive demolition before the new structure can be built.
Or could the thirds represent different groups within humanity? You mentioned sources suggesting a threefold lineage, maybe like Noah's three sons inheriting different destinies.
That's a fascinating alternative reading. That humanity isn't monolithic, but exists in maybe three main streams, particularly during this transition phase, based on their resonance with this incoming unified field.
Okay, what would those three streams be?
First, maybe the egoic third. Let's call them the goats, borrowing from another parable. These are souls still deeply invested in separation consciousness, individualistic, competitive, perhaps resistant to the shift.
Okay.
Second, the hidden third. Let's call them the sheep. This could represent the hybrid lineage itself, the custodian network woven into humanity, already resonating strongly with unity consciousness. They're the carriers of the template, already aligned.
And the third group?
The transitional third. This would be the largest group, the ones actively in metamorphosis, shifting back and forth, undergoing the most intense, maybe sometimes painful process of ego death and awakening. They're on the bridge.
This framework really sheds light on that famous sheep and goats judgment passage in Matthew 25, doesn't it? It stops being about arbitrary reward and punishment.
Exactly. It becomes about alignment. Goats symbolize separation consciousness. I did it for myself. Sheep symbolize unity consciousness. Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. Cooperation, interconnectedness. The judgment is in a sentence. It's more like a sorting, a revelation of the soul's underlying state. Is it aligned with separation or unity? And it's an invitation to transform, to shift from goat consciousness to sheep consciousness. Hashtag 4.3, the final unity.
So the whole vast arc, seeded by Venusians, guided through alchemy, nudged by technological catalysts, tested by masks, is all pointing towards one thing: a unified field.
Yes. The ultimate esoteric goal, often called Christ consciousness, or achieving the body of Christ, or simply planetary unity, a state where the separation dissolves.
And in that state, the breakaway civilization wouldn't need to be separate anymore?
Logically, no. If the goal is achieved, the hidden guides, the hybrid lineage, the awakened humanity, they all merge into one collective state of awareness. The separation between guide and guided disappears.
You know, that resonates perfectly with a lot of modern channeled material, too. Like the Law of One, talking about graduating from third density, the density of separation and choice, into a social memory complex.
A fourth or fifth density state where individual minds link up, share experience, become a collective unit.
Yes. And it echoes ancient mystical ideas, too, like the body of Christ in Christianity, or the Buddhist image of Indra's net.
Where every jewel in the net reflects every other jewel. Total interconnectedness. Yes, it's the same fundamental concept appearing across traditions and times.
So the custodians, throughout this incredibly long and complex history, from the Nephilim sacrifice to maybe even staging Roswell, their role has been like cosmic midwives.
That's a great way to put it. Using the whole drama, the secrecy, the ambiguity, the masks, the revelations, the challenges to push and prod humanity towards this collective birth, this awakening. Where the apocalypsis, the unveiling, is that moment the divine template they planted finally sprouts and flowers in everyone. Hashtag tag outro. Wow. That really weaves together an incredible, almost unbelievable hidden story, doesn't it? A secret gospel spanning potentially millions of years.
Let's just quickly recap that arc. It starts with the Venusian descent and sacrifice the Nephilim, planting the seed. Then the seeding of knowledge for civilization, like Sumer, understood through alchemy. Then the crucial split in the mission, Lucifer versus Christ, pride versus service, followed by ongoing strategic catalysts like maybe Roswell to build the infrastructure for unity, all leading towards the final unveiling the apocalypse as revelation and the sorting of consciousness.
The core takeaway from these sources, if you follow their logic, is just profound. That human history might not be this chaotic, random mess we often think it is. It could be a single, coherent, multi-millennial project. An orchestrated evolution towards spiritual alignment, managed from behind the scenes.
And the breakaway civilization, seen this way, isn't just about secret tech or hidden bases. It's the carrier of the blueprint for our own future state, a collective consciousness waiting to fully integrate with all of us.
Which leaves us, and you, the listener, with a final, really provocative thought to mull over. If these custodians, this hidden lineage, are essentially waiting for us, for humanity, to collectively make the shift into unity consciousness before they can fully reveal themselves.
Before the apocalypse can happen.
Right. Then what steps can you actively take right now in your own life, denying that old separate ego, picking up your own cross of transformation, choosing to act from universal love instead of fear and separation? How can your inner work actually contribute to accelerating that planetary unveiling?
Maybe the custodians are just waiting for the moment when every single human realizes they, too, can be the bright morning star.